Welcome to Politics here on France 24. Who is next? The economic crisis in Europe has created, it seems, a new political rule: outgo the incumbents. Last weekend, the socialists in Spain were the last ruling party to be swept out of power. The debt crisis and the austerity packages are bringing down one government after the other on the continent, from the north to the south, from the left to the right. Does this mean that Nicolas Sarkozy's re-election bid next spring is doomed? Well, to discuss the issue on the set today is Stéphane Cosset, who is the president of the Modem centrist party here in Paris. Also on the set is Richard Beardsworth, who is a professor of international relations at the American University of Paris. And also on the set, Mathieu Douaret, who is with the Ipsos Polling Institute. So over the weekend, the socialists suffered a historical defeat in Spain, prolonging a trend that we've been witnessing in recent months.
In Spain's biggest election victory in 30 years, the Conservative People's Party won an absolute majority. Mariano Rajoy will replace José Luis Zapatero and the socialists, the latest victims of the anger raging across Europe. Spain's outgoing socialists are the fifth government in the Eurozone to fall victim to the debt crisis, following Greece, Italy, Portugal, and Ireland. In February 2011, Ireland's former leader, Brian Cowen, dissolved Parliament and went on to lose the ensuing elections to Enda Kenny. In March, it was Portugal's turn. The government there fell after Parliament rejected its austerity package, and the socialist José Sócrates was replaced by the social democrat Pedro Passos Coelho. Earlier this month, former Greek Prime Minister George Papandreou found himself caught between a public growing increasingly angry at his government's austerity measures and the EU and IMF. Then Italy saw Silvio Berlusconi step down as Prime Minister to be replaced by the technocrat Mario Monti. However, the leaders being ushered in across Europe are committed to similar policies to soothe the markets, if not the people. Now, France's credit rating could be cut, and German taxpayers worry that they could be asked to bail out still more failing economies.
Richard Beardsworth, is this an epidemic raging across Europe? If you were in power during the debt crisis, it means you're out.
I don't think so, because I think, as the articles just said at the end, in fact, the same policies are being applied by the new governments, but clearly with regard to Italy and Greece in a more technocratic manner. So it sounds like there aren't a lot of alternatives at the moment. And I don't think that the country that forms the major axis of the European Union with Germany, and with a president who very much enjoys crisis and takes political opportunity out of crisis, Nicolas Sarkozy, I really don't see, with elections coming up next year, that between now and then he's going to be in a situation where his government falls. And finally, I think because...
But he could be losing that election.
He could be losing the election, but given the fact that Fillon has already put in 2 austerity measures in the last 2 months and indicated what direction he's going to go in, and given the fact that also those austerity measures seem to be not simply unjust, I would predict, but then, politics is not about prediction, it's about the unpredictable. I would predict that actually where the questions are going to come about who wins the election is who makes the better argument about the lack of alternative with regard to the coming 2 years best. And I think the things are open, but we know well that Sarkozy is a very strong political warrior. So it doesn't seem to me that things are as open as they might be elsewhere, and I don't think there's an epidemic. But again, I could be very wrong.
Let me ask Mr. Cosset, you are a member of the Modem party. Its leader, François Bayrou, is going to announce his candidacy for the presidential election. He did rather well last time, so it's just for our viewers to know. Do you think that the rulers in Europe, because they are forced or they feel forced to put in austerity measures that are unpopular, they are doomed just because they are bringing the bad news?
Well, I think that in the last 6 to 5 months, you are going to have still a lot of uncertainties. and it is clearly absolutely not possible to know what is going to happen, whether there is going to be a sort of flight for quality, as economists would say. Flight for quality will be, I take Nicolas Sarkozy as the less risky one, so you're going to be risk averse. He has been into power, so that's a possibility. Or the second possibility, which is, yeah, we really want to get rid of him, and we want an alternative. But I don't think that the discussion will be on whether austerity is a good thing or not. I think the discussion will be on who is going to be best to implement austerity. And for that, as you can see, there are options. And among those options, you have either national unity, as in Greece, or technical government. So being a little bit technical, or actually very technical, is not necessarily a disadvantage right now. So if you say the truth, if you are credible in saying the truth, and if you have the possibility to say, well, I want to implement that all together, as you can see in Spain, Rajoy said, I want to discuss with everybody. And the opposition said, we are ready to discuss with Rajoy. There is a sense that given the depth of the crisis, there is a need for national unity in Europe. And therefore, that need may in the end, trigger any kind of possibilities, even after the presidential election.
Okay, I want to get to the pollster around this table. We're going to see one poll. It's just there have been a number of polls showing Nicolas Sarkozy making some progress. You could argue that he was starting from a very low point, but he is making some progress against his main rival, François Hollande, who's the presidential candidate for the Socialist Party. Is it because Nicolas Sarkozy is clearly now wearing the mantle of the crisis president, the known entity, the one who is already in the driver's seat, and by contrast, his opponent as someone who doesn't have government experience and who would not be ready to govern?
Possibly, but I think that what is even more important is the fact that about what you both just said, which is very important, is that nobody is in fact really now discussing the fact that there is a need for more stringent austerity measures and budget discipline. And everybody knows in France, apparently, that after the elections, promises will not be kept if they are too generous. So the problem is how...
Which is new.
Which is quite new in France in particular. So the question apparently is how to best cope with the present situation that is clearly perceived as a lasting situation. And so from this point of view, it's not that obvious that Nicolas Sarkozy has given enough pieces of evidence of his capacity to really protect the French population from the consequences of these economic turmoils. And I would say that most of the election will probably be won or lost about the capacity, the ability to explain how fair this austerity is, how fairly this austerity is conducted, how fairly you can really cope with the current situation. Because Nicolas Sarkozy's record, for the time being, is not very clear. The way people will be impacted and which category of people must be impacted is not very clear for the time being, and most of the campaign could be about this issue.
Do you think that the issue of fairness will be crucial? Nicolas Sarkozy has often been criticized as being the president of the rich, of big business, and so on and so forth. And when you are in this very difficult economic situation, can you change that image? Is there enough time for him to perform this kind of makeover?
Well,
I don't know. I think that depends really on the months to come. I think everyone's saying the same thing here. I think it's so open, this contest, with regards to the fact that Sarkozy has really come back up. There are very few points separating them now.
There is still, in the second round at least, we can see the figures again. There's still a clear victory for François Hollande.
What I mean by that, there are arguments to be made. I think this is a campaign where arguments have to be made. Arguments have to be made about the justice of the treatment, so that, for example, if indeed people are going to have to work longer, then there should be clearly taxes targeted at the wealthy and very clearly targeted corporate taxes. That seems to be open to all parties to do. It doesn't seem to me there's a lot differentiating them there. I think a major issue, though, isn't just simply the debt here. It's not just simply austerity, and I hope we don't focus on it too much. There is a question of economic growth. Ultimately, if we're going to get out of this mess, and I talk not simply about France, but all European Union members, there has to be clear, long-term, sustainable growth for the European Union and its members with regard to a very competitive globalized world. Our exports, and here I talk about France, exports to China and India are minimal at the moment, 2%, 1%. There's a lot to do about the balances and imbalances of economics across the world. And I think that's got to be an argument of the campaign as well. And I actually think Sarkozy can make quite an interesting job about that. Why? Because he is still the president of the G20 for the next 2 months, and he could still bring out something around that, given the fact that they've got to work on global economic imbalances. So I would argue very simply, there's a lot open. Argument is going to be crucial. It's not simply debt, it's also growth.
Let me ask you, François Bayrou, your candidate to be, he's going to declare himself very soon, is now saying, I always told you the truth, that having a balanced budget, the debt, was the right thing to say and actually the right thing to do, which nobody did. And if I had been in power and so on and so forth. Do you think the French are ready for that discourse now? The French have always, in political campaign, expected nice promises, shining future and so on. Do you think they're ready to hear that Churchillian discourse today?
Well, I think so, yeah. I think that more than ever, the candidate that will say the truth has a better chance than in the past, has a better chance than Raymond Barre, for example, in the past, than Michel Rocard in the past. I think that we are at a key turning point in that respect. And what I see actually is that both Nicolas Sarkozy and François Hollande are moving into the direction, of we want to say the truth this time. The problem being that Nicolas Sarkozy has said so many times, now this is the truth, or now this is the right direction, and going into the opposite direction. As you mentioned, I will be fair, but not so fair eventually, that François Hollande is trying to say the truth, but he has division into his own party and division with the Green Party, for example, in that respect, that this is not easy. The chance of François Bayrou actually is that he has his own approach. He has been mentioning or supporting that approach for a long time. So he has consistency, he has integrity in that respect, on debt, on deficit, on producing in France, and therefore, at least for that, you can say that coherence and cohesion is a strong point.
According to the polls, is the credibility issue going to be the key one for the elections? Is this what voters are going to look like, or will they look at the measures for growth and employment?
Actually, voters do not really look at credibility. Credibility is an expert's assessment. What they look at is what this candidate is proposing. Does it really fit with both the situation, as I understand as it is, and my needs as a citizen, consumer, worker? And so when we asked the French what were the things that would be better if we were in a better situation, in a better world, there would be more of what? There would be more work, employment, and there would be more purchasing power. So
This is what
very
Nicolas
far ahead.
Sarkozy promised them in 2007.
Yeah, exactly. So,
right?
in fact, we are still waiting for the best way to this idealized future of France, where there would be work for everyone and a reward for this hardworking population.
Quickly, do you think populist parties will benefit from the crisis, and that this is really something the mainstream parties will have to deal with, including in France?
I think if politicians are not able to say the truth, I think that's a very important point. If politicians are not able to argue what is happening at the moment, that the challenges are unprecedented, they're not simply debt, they are growth. And they're growth at the moment where the EU is possibly challenged by global irrelevance. These are huge questions. If leaders cannot come up to the plate, as the Americans say, yeah, and talk about them to their peoples in a way whereby, because peoples are mature, they're not immature, and if they hear the truth in a way that they think is sincere and is articulated and complex, I don't think the peoples want simplicity at all, then I don't think populism, in France at least, will be a real challenge. But if leaders don't articulate in a careful way the challenges ahead, yes, I think populism is a danger.
I'd like to add something about this actually. We're talking about purchasing power, and that this is really important for the French. That is true. But if you also say, I'm going to inject more liquidity so that the French has more purchasing power, in the end, the French now know that this will mean more taxes, and they save most of it. So therefore, that speech and that approach that used to be used in the past is not used anymore. And this is why the truth is so important. Now, what is important also is if you say, okay, austerity, it's not going to work also.
Hope.
So hope, exactly. And hope is to say, well, we need to be all together in a situation like that. And we need to have a common target, a common objective for, say, 1 or 2 years all together in France. We need to stop division, we need to stop all of this, and we need all together to say it's going to be hard, it's going to be a lot of sacrifice for 1 or 2 years, but eventually it's going to be better. And with this, you will have already investors saying, okay, that's the way out of it. And investment will resume much more quickly than the speech of the past.
Okay, we have to leave it at that. Truth-telling, national unity. Well, we'll see if politicians heed your wise words today. Thank you to all of you, and thank you for watching this edition of Politics here on France 24. See you next week.